Hello, welcome to the Retro Game Club podcast, season 6, episode 17, which is also episode 180. I am Rob, and joining me is the new store manager of the Retro GameStop.
That's right, Retro GameStop. I want to tell you about a great deal we have at Retro GameStop, by the way. I think it's actually called GameStop Retro. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you remember a game called Wii Sports? You probably don't. It's okay if you haven't.
Yeah, I think it's pretty rare.
It's pretty rare. It only sold 82.9 million copies. That's it. So there's 8 billion people on Earth. So that's like 1% of the entire Earth population that owns a copy of Wii Sports. Mm-hmm. Pretty rare, right? 1% of the world's population.
Yeah.
So over at GameStop Retro, this is a real price. We are selling it for the low price of $32.99, which is a steal when you think about how rare this game is, relative to the number of people on Earth. And if you pay us an additional $25, right, then you can get $1.65 off that price.
That's a great deal. Yeah. Seems like this will last.
I think this is just an awesome idea, yeah.
Other than your new night job as store manager, what have you been up to?
Not much. I might actually, one of these, according to the store directory, they have one of these stores up in the outlet malls in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Right? I think it's technically Pleasant Prairie, but nobody's heard of Pleasant Prairie, so that's why I said Kenosha. Uh-huh. So I might take a trip up. I literally drove past it twice today because that's the direction I have to go to take my kid to school. So one of the times that I go up, though, I'm really tempted to stop by and see what they actually have in the store. Their site just shows logos for like tons of different systems. Sega Saturn is probably the rarest system that they show as having games for. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what they would even have. I mean, this looks like their website is a lot of loose discs. It's a lot of like loose Saturn discs for $80. Seems to be what's listed on the website. Really curious what they might actually have in person at one of these stores. So that's I don't know. I'll eventually stop there.
Buying online from GameStop's a bad idea because they don't tell you, even if it comes with a case, they don't tell if it's original case or if it's a GameStop replacement case.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't even get the right game. I've definitely gotten the wrong game from them before.
Yeah.
So later on this episode, we're going to be including an interview about the game Space Raft. And about the only retro gaming thing I've done this week was playing Space Raft. Mm-hmm. So I realize in the notes here, everything that I wrote about Space Raft, I also mentioned in the interview. So no one wants to hear me say the same thing twice. So what have you been up to?
Well, let's see. I have a billion notes. I did want to mention that a listener requested another Ask Us Anything episode, which I thought was a good idea. And by the way, listeners can always ask us anything, but in a couple episodes, we'll do a topic of it. So if you want to start loading us up with anything within reason questions, we'll answer probably most of them. And let's see what else. All my stuff finally arrived, mostly unscathed. Mm-hmm. So I set up all my PlayStation stuff and my Mr. FPGA and my Switch. So I have all that stuff back, and my storage unit is full here already,
yeah.
Even with stuff at my house and in my garage. So I have a problem.
Yeah, because I thought you had to kind of use the term downsize. Like you're in a smaller place than what you had in the U.S.
Oh, yeah,
correct?
Big time, yeah. So instead of having a whole basement to myself, I have one shelf in the family room. And it's not even a very big shelf.
Yeah. And do they do the McMansion in Australia?
They do. You have to get pretty far out to be able to afford one. But
I was imagine.
Yeah, if you're in Sydney, you're looking at, 10 million just to start with that. So kind of, it's a little bit out of my price range. Just a little bit.
Tiny bit, perhaps. Yeah.
Yes. But, having all that stuff here now, I went to change my accounts to be from US to Australian. So
Yeah.
Microsoft for Xbox, Nintendo, and Steam were all like, yeah, no problem. And 3 seconds later, my accounts were switched. Sony, it was like as if I kicked a puppy. They're just like, not possible. Are
Yeah.
you crazy? You have to create a
Yeah.
new account for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's when you kind of remember at this point that Sony is a media company, and media companies love placing arbitrary, like geographic restrictions on content.
Yeah, it's stupid. It is stupid. I think it's probably bad programming. That's, I mean, remember the reason why that you couldn't change your account name for years and years was because they used it as the primary key, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really bad idea, is to use a string value as a primary key.
Yeah. Yeah. So they said I could play my games, but if I want to buy any new games online, I have to create a new account, which means I would have to pay them twice for a PSN account if I want
Yeah.
to keep all the games I got from PlayStation Network.
So which VPN service are you using?
Exactly, yeah. Or I just keep buying physical for as long as possible. We shall see how long that lasts. And what else? Oh, I started playing and I finished Eater Nights. I don't know if you've heard of this game.
I think I've heard of it, but I don't know.
It was, if any of our listeners watched a year ago, I think it was an E3 announcement. Everyone freaked out that it's like kind of a dating simulator, and like in the announcement it said like press R2 to hold hands, and they did, and like everyone in the crowd freaked out. I played it because I thought the combat looked cool, and I've never played a game like this. It's described as a Persona Light, and I've never played a Persona game.
Okay.
And
I mean, Persona, like, the dating part is semi-optional. But there's a bonding system. Like, you can go and meet, your character gets strengthened by forming bonds with other people, but they're not necessarily romantic. They can be, but they don't have to be.
this is the same way, except at the end of the game, you end up with one of the females. Or one male.
Okay.
There's 3 or 4 females and one male. So you get to choose.
So in that part's different from Persona. Persona does not allow, like, same-gender relationships.
And I liked it. The combat was really fun. The bosses were really fun. However, I hate myself for liking this game. Like, I feel like I'm actually becoming a Tifa waifu pillow. And I don't mean a weeb. I literally mean, like, I'm slowly turning into a waifu pillow. So,
Okay.
there's that.
Everything's good, though, with you, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But I don't think I really need to play another dating sim. I think that was enough for me. The combat did feel pretty cool, though. It felt very Hi-Fi Rush. And during that game, for the first time ever, I'm 46 years old, and for the first time ever, instead of pressing save game, I pressed load game, and so I lost 3 hours of progress. So that was not a great feeling.
So here's a question for listeners who play RPGs. Which one of those is worse? Accidentally clicking load game when you meant to click save game, or clicking save game when you meant to hit load game? Like, you miss... Like, I play a lot, like, the Trails games a lot, obviously. And they all have missable events. Like, there's events with characters or, sort of subplots, not major story, but side quests or character events that expire after you advance to, like, the next major story point. And the only way to do those events ever again is New Game Plus. So that's a scenario where it's like, oh, you know what? I'm okay losing 5 minutes of progress to go back and do these events. But if you go to that menu and you click save game instead of load game, you actually save over the game you intended to load. That's now like, okay, I will have to play this game a second time if I want to do that.
Even in point-and-click adventures where you could get yourself into an unwinnable state.
Yeah. That's true. I can think of some games like that, that have the same problem.
Yeah, that might be a good question of the week. But we have to kind of power through this. A lot of news items I'll just kind of mention for the most part. FlippyBird just released a 4-connector WaveBird thing, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't really understand why.
Well, you could already connect 4 WaveBirds to a GameCube. So this is just like... Yeah, this is just like a more complicated way to do something you can already do.
Yeah, I really don't get the point of this other than if WaveBird adapters, the thing that actually connects to the GameCube, if those are hard to come by. Less than
Yeah, I mean, I have seen a loose WaveBird at a garage sale before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess that this could fix that, but it's a neat project, but yeah. I think you put in the next one.
Oh, did I?
Maybe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I put a headline here. I assume we want to talk about the Atari 7800 Plus.
I mean, we could mention it, right?
So, yeah, I guess they're doing Atari, the Atari Holdings Company, they've done a thing called like the 2600 Plus before. I don't know what it's called, the 2600 Plus. But it was a system to play original 2600 carts. Now, of course, they're being emulated because like the 4 games they can't play are like the same 4 games you can't play on Stella or whatever emulator they forked.
Yeah.
So this is the same thing, but this plays 7800 and 2600 games because it's a 7800 clone. I don't know if this is the first console released to play 7800 games, like physical games, other than the 7800, of course. And it includes Bentley Bear game, Bentley Bear's Crystal Quest. It's a new game for the 7800. Like, I kind of like this. I don't like the controller very much.
Mm-hmm.
I can probably get around that. If it's a Bluetooth controller, ultimately, I assume you could probably pair something else to it. And it's like, yeah, I don't have any way to play my 7800 games on TV right now, other than without an emulator, right? Because the 7800 is the, you connect the 2 little things to the screws in the back of the TV.
The RF,
and, switch between channel 3 and 4, like that kind of stuff. I don't have any of that stuff anymore. I'm not going to get that stuff again. So, like, this is pretty cool. And it also got me thinking, like, wait a minute. Couldn't Atari Holdings Company now make an Intellivision version of this?
Probably, yeah. I assume so.
Yeah, like that sounds awesome to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would rather have an Intellivision than this just because I think I own like 2 7800 games and the library just doesn't really speak to me.
Okay.
Yeah,
I understand that. I have a pretty big 7800 library.
And like you said, Atari 50 exists.
Atari 50 has a lot of the games. Yeah. So the thing that is tempting though is the third-party games will never be on Atari 50.
Yeah.
You're not going to get Pitfall on Atari 50 in all likelihood because Atari's bought a lot of IP, but Activision is is Activision owned by Microsoft now?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Atari's not getting any of that IP.
Yeah, and because of that, we're probably never getting another Pitfall game.
No, and if you did, it's not something you're going to want to play.
It'd be Nathan Drake, right? That's all it would be.
Yeah, I suppose if you made a game exactly like Uncharted, but it was with Pitfall Harry, I guess I would like that.
Maybe that could be like a skin that could be downloaded where they just make him dress like that and then like it just changes his name. That's it.
Yeah.
My notes I put in this, and this is very subjective, obviously, is that I never liked the color spectrum design of the 2600 Junior, which translated into the 7800. To me, it always seemed more 70s than newer, like 80s cutting edge, looking into the future kind of thing. So I just don't think this is a very good looking system.
Yeah, I understand that.
And then, my favorite article of the episode is, so MakeMhz has something called Project Stellar, which lets you use an SD card in your original Xbox. It also does a HDMI upgrade to it, and a bunch of quality of life stuff. It's just, it gives life to your original Xbox. And version 1.6.1 of the firmware was released, which opens up NetPlay, meaning you could load ISOs over your network. So you don't have to worry about even copying stuff to the SD card anymore. It just streams it, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the Naomi 2, which was the Dreamcast arcade board, actually had support for this way back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I thought that. Did we talk about that recently? I feel like that might have been noted on a different news article at some point.
In the past 7 years, we probably talked about it.
Yeah, I suppose.
I was all about the Naomi for a while. But yeah, so this is a really cool, really breathe life back into your Xbox kind of update. So go get one of those. I have one of these that's still in a box. I'm divided whether I have room for one more console. I have my 3 modern consoles set up. The only reason why I set up my Xbox Series is for my son. He's getting into Flight Simulator. So kind of an easy place for him to play MS Flight Simulator. And so I have room for one more. So it's either going to be the Xbox with the Stellar in it, or it's going to be my modded Dreamcast. Thinking going Xbox since that's a big library I haven't played a lot of. We shall see. I know everyone is just really excited to know which decision I make.
Yeah.
I think I put this next one in here. I have mixed feelings about this article. Sega Genesis is finally capable of SNES-style transparency effects thanks to clever modders. And what this really means is the Mode 7 in the SNES could do very cool transparency effects like in Mario World. And they claim that Genesis couldn't do it. The Genesis can do it. This is just a very clever programming trick. That's all. This is just very good programming.
Yeah, it's playing around with some of the color features in the Genesis that people don't use very often.
It looks amazing. I mean, I'm. It's more the article I'm against, not the actual project. The project is great. Now, as a Genesis programmer, is this as tricky and cool as I think it is, or is it kind of?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's using a technique. It's using some features that I don't know that a lot of games take advantage of, because it's playing with it's hard to say, but like when you render tiles, there are like built-in like shadow and highlight effects to, on the Genesis, and then they also are like using, from what I read, they're using like neighboring colors that when they display next to each other kind of blur a little bit. I mean, some of this is just like you're dealing with old hardware and you can kind of take advantage of maybe not deficiencies, but just
kind of like Sonic, how they did the waterfalls in Sonic, that kind of thing you're talking about.
Yeah, you can kind of get colors to sort of blend together. So it's really cool looking.
The video is, very impressive.
It is, yeah. So you could do some neat stuff with this technique. I'm trying to think of games that, if there were any games that actually did something like this before.
I can't think of any. I mean,
yeah,
like maybe the Castlevania game, but probably not. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to go through and look some more. But yeah, it's a really cool. I mean, it's a lot of effort. It was not easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, insert your required blast processing joke. We'll leave this article before that happens. Huh? How about that?
Yeah.
Did you put this next one in, or did I, or did Zach? I don't remember.
Which one is this?
NESMaker.
I added this.
Okay.
This is the. Oh no, I did not add NESMaker. I added the one after it. I'm sorry, I skipped this article completely, because we talked about NESMaker in the Space Raft interview a little bit.
Okay. Well, just a quick mention. It's getting a new name. What is the new name? It's Retro Game Forge. Sounds like a podcast. But
kind of, yeah.
But now it could create more than NES games, like SNES and maybe Genesis in the horizon, possibly. So that's all. a cool update to that if you want to make some retro games. And you talked about it in the interview.
We just talked about this, yeah, in the interview that's coming up. It's a kind of maybe a throwaway mention. We just mentioned it briefly, but it's definitely something we talked about.
But this next one is yours, right?
Yeah, I was just noting that there was finally, I think, a good use of generative AI, which is, this is GameNGEN, so game like game engine.github.io. And these are people who are, they trained an AI to replay Doom games. But it's not playing Doom. It's drawing a playthrough of Doom created by watching playthroughs of Doom.
Oh, so it's pretty much making a video.
It's making a video of someone playing through the first level of Doom. Doom is not actually running in this case.
So strange. Wow.
Yeah, so this is what they call it. It's basically hallucinating a Doom game.
Wow. And
it looks pretty good.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it tricked me for sure.
Yeah, and there are parts where like characters get kind of blurry, and you can tell the way you can tell is some of the characters kind of are blurry, and it seems like all the enemies take a lot more shots than they would in an actual Doom game.
And the blood happens closer to, I guess I'd say, the camera than on the enemy.
There's a lot more splatter.
Yeah, it definitely feels a bit more high res. Are you a big Eternal Champions fan?
I mean, the Sega CD version's okay.
I'd say it's okay, yeah. Would you go see an Eternal Champions movie in the theater?
Not in the theater, no.
Oh, okay. Well, they're making one of those.
Is it going to be in the theater, or is this a direct-to-DVD?
Oh, I don't know. That is a good
DVD,
question.
I'm sorry, direct-to-streaming.
Yeah, we knew what you meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the plot is here and what characters are here and who, other than people listening to this podcast, would remember this game.
Yeah, as far as Sega IPs to make into a movie go, I guess this isn't the worst. Like Echo the Dolphin movie would be, I think, unwatchable.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, you would need some assistance with watching that movie, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with Calibri.
Calibri, yeah, that would take a little bit of help too.
Shenmue might be a good one.
Yeah, Shenmue's basically a movie already. Outrun, you could probably make into a movie. I mean, in the 70s, there were definitely a lot of movies where the premise was, we're going to race across the country.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah, that kind of was a fad, wasn't it, in terms of movie making?
Yeah, it was, and it's...
It didn't go too well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of ones I've seen. Like, Cannonball Run, was that one of those?
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. Rat Race is another one.
Rat Race, I forgot about that. Okay.
It was not
I've
very
seen
good.
It's a mad world or whatever it's called. I've seen that one. What else have I seen? All right, I need to go over the whole list. But
yeah.
Smokey and the Bandit, is that one of those? Is that Dukes of Hazzard? I don't think I've seen Smokey and the Bandit.
I don't know if I have either. Maybe when I was really young.
All right. Any other? We have too many news articles. All right. What else is left on here? RadioShack catalogs.
Yeah, we could go back to 60 years of RadioShack catalogs, which I obsessed over these when I was a kid. For some reason, I thought the ham radios were the coolest things that I needed to own for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then eventually
they were not. Yeah.
Yeah, they had computers in there eventually, but yeah, I don't know why I love those so much.
Yeah, I mean, again, this isn't new because, like, I did 2 games set in, like, malls in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And for both of them, I consulted this site because there is a fake RadioShack store in there, and I wanted to make sure it was selling items that actually existed in that year.
Nice. Nice. And then they've re-released the Legend of Zelda Complete Series on DVD. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I actually like this show. I already own the DVD set, so this is sort of like not news to me. The original DVD set was 3 DVDs, and it included some not very good DVD games, and then bonus features.
Nice. Yeah.
The bonus DVD games are essentially like, tile matching kind of games.
I think if you scroll down in this, it has that old version. No, it's just a collector's version, which I don't know what would be.
I don't think this is, because this is only 1 DVD.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this has nothing extra, because nowhere, like, it has a picture of the box art, and nowhere on the back does it say anything about extra features.
There's additional DVD options, and it has the May 2012 version, which is probably what you're talking about. And if you click on it...
What does that mean?
It has the old DVD that you're talking about, the 3 DVD set.
But then that would take 3 DVDs.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. Other people are selling used.
Oh, I see. I thought you were saying there was another option for this. I thought, no. Oh,
no,
okay.
no,
I was
no.
confused by what you were saying.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I watched this every Friday as a kid. Because, right, it was part of the Mario show, except this was what they did on Fridays.
Fridays, that's right.
But my
13
favorite
Fridays they did this.
My favorite thing about it, though, was the Beavis and Butthead mashup. I thought that was pretty good. And then you interviewed Raftronaut, the creator of one of our bumper musics, right?
Correct. Yeah, we talked about Space Raft on Switch, and I think this turned out really good.
Yeah, the Space Raft is his band's NES game, right?
Yep. It's a video game based on his band in Milwaukee.
And yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the interview. There's something with one of my kids. I forget what it was, but yeah, I wish I could have made that interview. And here you go.
All right, and today we are talking to Jordan, aka Raftronaut, which I probably just mispronounced, whose game Space Raft is going to be hitting the Switch very soon, or maybe is out already. How you doing?
I'm doing well. The Switch port just released, I think, on the 16th of this month, so we're on our 2nd week now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So, I mean, I played this for about an hour 2 nights ago. Really had a lot of fun with it.
Awesome.
I was kind of garbage at the driving stages. Why don't you describe the game, though, and I'll tell you what parts I was good at and which parts I was bad at.
The special thing about Space Raft Deluxe is that it's kind of the definitive digital port of my first NES game, Space Raft. And it also includes, basically it's 2 games bundled together because I was commissioned to make an arcade version of the game for a local punk venue here in Milwaukee called X-Ray Arcade. So they built a cabinet for me, and I basically retooled the ROM completely from the ground up to work specifically for the arcade setting. I basically just used it as an opportunity to make kind of a new game out of the same engine. It's not quite a sequel, but it's kind of a remix for the arcade and a continuation, I guess. So both of those are packaged on Space Raft Deluxe. Space Raft is it's an NES game that I made about my Milwaukee indie rock band called Space Raft. And it's like, it's kind of like, I don't know, the Homebrew Game Club, they described it as like kind of a Hanna-Barbera-esque rock and roll adventure.
Yeah.
How do I describe this? So I kind of took, as a band, we have a van and we spend a lot of time driving around in the van talking about ideas or whatever. So I kind of made this driving game that's a bit reminiscent of TNC Surf Design.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that because it's exactly the game I was going to compare it to.
Yeah, it was that with a bit of the theming of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Because once you clear these driving stages, you're able to get out of the van and choose a band member and go through these kind of Pac-Man style stages, which was, the simple 1 color per member aesthetic was influenced by Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it was also like one of the earliest things, like we've got 4 members. What is the easiest analogy on an NES game to kind of draw from? But, I kind of chose different, rock and roll adjacent NES games to use as influence, like Skate or Die, TNC Surf Design. It's another one that went like roller games. I took a lot of inspiration from that game.
I played, when I was doing the driving stages, I kind of realized, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is like TNC Surf Designs, because it's like, I was getting obliterated the first couple times I tried it. And I'm like, oh, wait, this is a matter, you got to memorize the stage. Eventually you get ramps later on. Stuff. I'm like, okay, once you learn the layout of each stage, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
Like TNC Surf Design, that was a game first time you played it, you probably fell 100 times, and then you got hooked on it.
Yeah, it was, the idea was to make a simple obstacle course, and the levels in the game are different neighborhoods in Milwaukee. And all of them feature potholes and road construction. So that's kind of the major theme of the driving sections. But yeah, it was just something fun to play the band's music and be able to drive the van through the streets, kind of do a little obstacle course. So that was the real impetus of the game. I had wanted to maybe do something like a shoot 'em up kind of scrolling thing, but I decided that it wasn't quite right for driving a band van. Just doing something, having a van in space or something kind of more ridiculous like that was kind of my early idea. But I pivoted away from that into something that was a little more grounded.
Yes, and as someone who has to drive through Milwaukee a couple times a year, I assure you it is always under construction.
It's true.
I don't really know what the deal with Milwaukee is, that they are always working on the roads, but
well, there's a lot I could say about that. The biggest contender is the weather, right? We don't dig our roads deep enough for them to hold that long. So, depending on how bad the winters are, it can really just cripple the roads, plus all the salt. I'm sure you've got the same.
Yeah, and it's that particular corridor is very high, semi traffic. So
yeah, exactly.
But I like Milwaukee. That's why I do enjoy the Milwaukee references in the game quite a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the only video game set in Milwaukee ever. I didn't research that ahead of time.
There's been a few since, and I know that there was the game Hotline Miami had, I think it was some sort of hack for Hotline Milwaukee.
Okay.
I'd seen screenshots of that was shared around locally here. And got some buzz. So that was a fun idea, but I don't think that it was anything dedicated to the city. And I know that there's been a couple of bands that have put together video games about Milwaukee after Spacecraft was published. Kind of started a little mini wave.
Now that I look at it, I forgot that there's a bunch of Harley Davidson games. So of course.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Of course.
I was gonna say what level 158 of Rampage is Milwaukee.
158, very specific memory.
I know I'm making that up. I know it's in the back end of the game, because when I was young, it was something that you have to play through a whole 2 hours of Rampage to be able to see the words Milwaukee on the screen.
Yeah, because it starts in Chicago and has to loops around the country. And Milwaukee gets it at the very end, if I recall.
Yeah, I forget how it goes. I just remember it being towards the end, and then having it does start in Milwaukee, because it was a Valley Midway game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Midway. Yeah, so they started in Chicago. It's like Chicago, then they go south to Aurora, and then they kind of do a loop around the country and back.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but the overhead stages I found were fun too. So you mentioned it has 4 players that are based on the band members. Each one has a different ability. I kind of chose, instead of collecting items like you would in Zelda, I just decided to give each member their own kind of specific function. So that way, it gives the player a little more incentive to switch around and try things out. And those sections were really inspired by arcade kind of gameplay, just your, Dig Dug, Pac-Man style games, or just your maze chase adventures. But then later on, I managed to work in more Zelda influence as well, with some open-ended stages and exploration. Yeah, by the time you get to, it's around the 3rd stage, you're in a giant park, and there's actual there's a whole map, and you have to solve puzzles and everything. And the game really grows. If you just fire it up and you just do the first stage, that's not even close to the whole game. That's what's really neat about it, that it just keeps expanding over time. So this is me as a selfish question. So how was this game developed? What kind of tooling did you use?
Yeah, so I developed most of the graphics using NES Screen Tool, which is an older iteration of some, easy pixel editing software. Now there's a version called NEXXT, which is been forked by Franken Graphics. It's a lot more user-friendly now. And that's what I've been using mainly to do all of my graphic work on. For Spacecraft, I ended up using the NESMaker engine on this game. It was the first game that I actually made myself. So I found the NESMaker engine in, I think it was 2018 or 2019. And I started to kind of piece together how the scripts work and try to figure out the tile collisions and stuff, and tried to make a plan for what it did and how I could incorporate those things into a game. And additionally, had a friend of mine, Dale Coop, come on and help me with some programming as well. The nice thing about NESMaker is that it allows you to program scripts and link them up through the GUI. Mm-hmm. So if you have some specific physics functions, you can write a script for that, and then you can drag it in and it compiles it into the 6502 so that it can be pulled up where it needs to be in the cycle. So it's a really helpful learning platform to learn some 6502 assembly language. I did some very light coding at first, and my talents are mainly in the graphical and audio department and design too. Yeah, and since finishing Spacecraft, I've kind of just pivoted into looking for collaborations to kind of make everything easier, and knowing that those are my strengths. So
yeah, it's a great tool, and it seems like, I don't know, seems like there's 100 homebrew games made in it now. I know that number's a little bit exaggerated, but it's doing really well.
And maybe not exaggerated. It's really sparked a lot of interest. NES Homebrew is a lot older than NESMaker, and there's a lot of other tools as far as compilers. There's also C libraries and stuff that you can write from. Those are really popular with programmers. But I think for a lot of artists and musicians like myself, finding a way in through NESMaker is a really friendly landing spot. Because you can at least, import your music and import your graphics and get some things moving on screen pretty quickly, just to get, just the audio visual aspect going. Because otherwise it can take, a long time to just get the assets built up working with a programmer before you see anything on screen at all, which is not a bad thing either. But it definitely is harder to teach the skills when you're flexing your patience like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that probably stops a lot of people from getting into it, I would assume.
Yeah, it's as immediate, like now all of these compilers are so quick. We can export our ROMs so quickly and build these games so fast compared to what they used to do in the day. It would take hours to compile code and spit out an EEPROM to test. And, even though all that stuff is sped up, it's still a really slow process of making incremental changes and testing. I think overall it took me about 2.5 years to finish Spacecraft once I got really got my feet under me.
Yeah.
And it took me about a year and a half of just planning and tinkering with pixel art and especially with using FamiTracker, the music program. That's incredibly useful to me. And for the most part now, I've kind of pivoted into doing mainly soundtracks for other developers, because that's kind of my, that's the thing that I can do the fastest and with the most confidence. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And music is a really hard skill to learn. I still can't figure out how to do anything.
It's also really hard to describe, it's really hard to distill all your musical ideas into the limitations of a sound chip as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very highly specific thing. And then to kind of to do the sound design so that there's sonic space left for sound effects to sound clear and good as well. It's so much trial and error to try to get stuff sounding right, to get a jump sound, something that you might hear 2,000 times in a playthrough, get that sound right. Takes a lot of effort sometimes, or sometimes it's the first thing that you pull out of the hat works fine, and then you don't have to think about it again.
Yeah, and I'll say the soundtrack I think turned out great on the Switch conversion.
Thank you.
I don't know how, I don't know a lot about emulating, obviously like Nintendo has their own emulator for running NES games, and it's pretty good. I know you're using the I have to pronounce it too, the
Emulation.
10. Thank
Yep.
you. I'm glad you got
Yep.
that.
Mhm.
We've done other conversions, and
Mhm.
it looks great sound. I mean, it looks like you're playing on NES. There are all the kinds of things that are going to an NES game. Like I actually found when I was doing the driving stages that if I was having a hard time getting through a level, you can fire. You have like rockets, sort of. You're firing from the band. You can just fire a ton of those, and it actually slows the game down like a real NES would.
Mhm.
Like, okay, good. Now I got a little extra time to learn the layout. I don't know if that's intended behavior or not, but it helped me out.
Yeah, for my first game, there's not a lot I could do for the slowdown. Although, in games that I've developed since then, there's been a lot of things that I've mitigated to improve the CPU timing and stuff to make sure that stuff doesn't happen. But with NESMaker, there's also a lot of heavy code under the hood as well to facilitate for all the different functions that it can do. So sometimes it's not the best optimized, engine for certain things. And I know when it's scrolling, it's, it tends to get heavier faster. Kind of designed around that. I used a lot of background tiles and stuff to prevent there being much enemy slowdown on screen to kind of keep things snappier.
Yeah. I mean, the only time I noticed it is when I was intentionally trying to do it through ground stuff. So I mean, it plays very fast, and
Nice.
the overhead stages, I'm really having a hard time like saying what they remind me of. Like there's an Intellivision game they kind of remind me of a bit. Where have you ever played Dragonfire? I guess that was on Atari also.
I've only played the 2600 version.
Okay, that was a little bit of what they remind me of, because you're in a new stage, you're trying to run through and grab items before. I mean, there's not like an enemy running along the side, but there is an enemy on the screen you're trying to avoid. Except it also has the element then of, you have to choose the right character, because there might be barriers in this space that only one of the 4 characters can get through. So I thought that part was really a lot of fun. It's been a while since I played a new NES game that I was really got into.
Nice.
So I know I don't want to take up too much time, but how do people want to get this game? And I really recommend it. I'm not just saying it because I really enjoyed this game. You get it on Switch. Are there any other ways to get it right now?
It's coming to Steam. We had it planned on the 17th, but there was some delays with dealing with Steam and proving our IP on it, ironically.
Okay.
Technically the IP belongs to us, but since it is IP, they need to do their diligence and make sure. So it's a bit eye rolling, but it's coming out on Steam. It should have all the same features as the Switch version as well. And we're probably going to be rolling it out onto other platforms too, but that's going to be months, maybe not even until the end of the year. We might look at some other platforms as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Switch is the perfect platform.
It is. And this is such a weird specific project. When I made the game, because Spacecraft had an existing audience here in Milwaukee, and I assumed that making a Nintendo, because we make records, we make vinyl records, and we have always published our music on vinyl, and all of our most of our fans are record collectors as well. And I kind of assumed that people that would be interested in old media like I am would also be interested in maybe picking up a Nintendo cartridge or something as a fun novelty item. So I figured that there might be 30 or 40 people in my audience that would support this weird project that I wanted to set out on. But it was much more popular than I imagined, and the word of it spread really fast, and it became a thing that people talked about, even though a lot of people in my music community don't have NESs at home still. It was like something that was talked about online so much that they still wanted to see it and play it. Part of that inspired the arcade cabinet at X-Ray Arcade to kind of give people more access in the community that don't have game consoles at home. But the bigger thing is that a lot of people have Nintendo Switches at home and they don't have NESs.
Yeah, or you have an NES that just blue screens every time you try and start it, right?
Yeah, I mean, locally, if any of my buddies are having problems with that, I always try to coax them to, let them giving them some advice, or just bring the NES over and let me fix it up for them. Because usually those things are so simple to fix. It's some bent wires, or it needs to be cleaned, or blah, blah, blah. But, as well as I do.
I mean, I have like 3 NESs behind me, and I think 2 of them work right now. So.
Oh, really? I think I have a total of, with my Famicom, I've got 4 NESs and a Famicom, and they
yeah, I have a Famicom clone. I forgot about that.
nice. They all get used though. I've got them all packed up for conventions and stuff. So when I bring out my tables, I've got all the NESs out on display.
Well, speaking of conventions, if you want to try the game out, this is a fixture at Midwest Gaming Classic now. There's a homebrew area for NES, and I think this has been there at least 3 years in a row.
It's been there since 2021 was the first after the pandemic, and that was the first one that I've went to, and I've been to everyone since.
Yeah. It's a good place to check out not just Space Rap, but any like new NES homebrew game. They have a really good section for that.
Oh, I can't recommend Midwest Gaming Classic enough if you like any sort of. Well, I guess to be honest, it's mainly NES homebrew at the MGC. I know other like Portland Retro Gaming Classic is more focused on Atari. And MagFest is kind of more focused on chiptune stuff. MGC has got some of the best showing of NES homebrewers in the country. It's one of the best events for NES homebrew. And I'm being a local here. I'm always trying to cheerlead that event and trying to get more brewers to come out and set up with us because it's always good to see new faces. And it's always good for the audience to see new faces as well, because if they're seeing my game there every single year, it gets a little stale. I like to bring out my new stuff, but it's like I can only work so fast.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It takes two. Even once you're good at it, it's still probably 2 years to make a game that you're not embarrassed to show other people, right?
Yeah, and I launched my second game this year. Was with collaboration with Bite the Chili Productions in Champaign, Illinois, and that's called The Storied Sword. We put that on Kickstarter in April, and we're just about to start shipping our cartridges now. So that's been a big deal in my life lately.
Oh yeah, that one just because I have not been on Kickstarter forever. That one just flew right past me. But I remember looking at I don't know if we talked about it on the show or not, but like I see there's like it's on itch. Yeah, it is on itch.io.
There's a demo is up there. Yeah, the entire first level of the game is playable on itch.io, but we're really close to shipping our limited edition copies, and then once we ship those, we're going to be releasing the ROM and shipping all the regular editions. So that should be in the next, 2 or 3 weeks. So the ROM should be available for purchase on itch, I think by September.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. Well, so that's about when this is going to come out. So it's perfect.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's, that's a big step up for me. That's an 8-way scrolling platformer inspired by Ninja Gaiden and Batman. Nathan Tolbert, the programmer on that, did a really bang up job. I did all the graphics and the music and co-designed it with him. And we kind of traded off doing the level designs and stuff. And it just, because it was a collaboration, I feel like it's so much better than what my skills would allow. We were able to play off with each other and improve on each other's ideas in ways that I could not have done myself. And so I'm just really pleased with the way that came out because it was just such a productive process working with Nathan on that.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So anything else you want to plug?
Anything else? I guess besides Storied Sword, I've got a new website. It's raflabsinteractive.com. That's got all of my link trees, and I think I've got about 32 credits as an NES composer now. I've done a lot of work in the last 4 years, and most of that is linked on my site. So if you're interested in chiptune or NES soundtracks and stuff, you can take a look there. And yeah, I guess the other announcements are just that I'm going to be working on new projects.
All right. So last and possibly least, we ask everyone who shows up to make a recommendation, one game for people to play. Listen to our podcast.
Okay. Give me a second. Let me cue that up. You said one, right?
One, yes. One game that people should play.
I've been playing this game that was published by Broke Studio, developed by Dark Bits, called Data Man.
Okay.
It's an NROM NES game, so it's only 40 kilobytes, but it's a 2-player co-op game where you're inside the NES motherboard and defending the CPU chip from bugs.
Oh wow!
And so you're running around on the PCB and shooting bugs, and It's an absolute blast. I really love that game.
Yeah.
You know, it's short because it's an NROM game because it's only 40 kilobytes, but it's really masterfully done. It's got an exceptional game over routine. Plus, it's got the 2-player co-op, so it's really a lot of fun to play with a friend. I just completed it the other day with a buddy, and I cannot say enough good things about this one.
Yeah, I'm looking at it here it's on itch.io also, and it looks like Smash TV. Like
it's a little bit like that, except it's not an 8-way shooter. It's so when you're holding shoot, you can move in any direction, but the other button is to throw grenades. And so it's got this power-up system that works as like a speed boost, and so I guess your player life works as just your speed up. So if you have all your life, you're a lot faster and you shoot faster, but the more that your life goes down, the slower you get.
wow, okay.
So it's like there's like a twist on all these kind of arena shooter mechanics. So it looks like Smash TV, and it plays about 70% like that. But the mechanics are tweaked from there, and it's very unique outside of that. I couldn't recommend it high enough. You know, for grabbing the ROM or buying a cartridge from Broke Studio, it's just a fantastic game.
Yeah, I'm just looking. The ROM on itch.io is $10. You get the NES version and the Windows version and the Mac version.
So, and also I was talking to the devs, and like I said, like the game takes place on the NES PCB, and one of the greatest features is that it uses the region detect to change the graphic on the NES CPU chip in the middle of the screen, because in the US it's the 2A03 chip, but in Europe, the PAL regions, it's the 2A07 chip. And they actually did the work to change the graphics on the CPU chip depending on which region you're playing it in.
Oh wow, so that is some great attention to detail.
I'm just like, like all the detail in it. I'm so impressed with what they did with it, and it's just a real joy to play.
I'm now thinking if that would be possible. I know Sega Genesis development. I'm trying to think through how you would even do something like that. I think I could figure it out.
So I wonder this. So I don't know if this is Broke Studio's proprietary region detect, because I know their cartridges work in any region. You just have to tap the reset button a few times for it to determine which console it is, and then it works fine. So I wonder if their particular PCB just has a function for the auto detect, and then it chooses to load certain bits of information based on which region is detected. I'm assuming that's how it works. So
yeah, I mean, I was thinking more like, if there's slight variance in the chip, maybe there's like an instruction that's on one chip than on the other, or maybe a timing difference between them. You know, because I think you could detect PAL versus NTSC in code. I don't think you need that seems like something you could do. But which chip variant? Yeah, I have to think about that, because I have to see. I wonder if I could write, like, I've never really thought about, like, could I write code to detect if I'm running on like Genesis model 1, 2, or 3? You know, like, I'm sure you could do that. I've just never really thought about.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Are those all have PAL variants too, right?
Yeah. The 3 I don't recall offhand. Well, the 3 has to have some, like, well, no, that wouldn't be PAL. I was going to say the 3 probably has some kind of Brazil variant, but that's not PAL. So that would be whatever. I can't remember off the top of my head what the spec is, but it's not regular PAL. All right, well, enough about that. So yeah, please download Space Raft, and thank you for joining us.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you again, Raftronaut, for joining us. And everybody should check this game out. I know I said it in the interview, but I have been playing it on my Switch, and I think it's a fun game.
Yeah, it is a cool game. And I haven't listened to the interview myself yet, so I'm excited for this podcast release, and then I will listen to it. And we have some Game Club, some pretty good games here. Can we start with yours?
Okay, sure. So I was doing wrapping up the summer here with a trip to the theme park. So I originally tried the PC version. I own a physical copy of that. Tried it in DOSBox, and then kind of remembered why I don't like messing around with DOS games anymore. So the game ran at roughly the speed of light, and I didn't really feel like messing with DOSBox options to slow it down. So then I tried the Genesis version, because it has cheat codes. And it's actually a pretty good effort to port to the Genesis, except the music is like 1 5-second loop.
Okay.
It's just the same music on 5-second loop until you want to rip the speaker off your TV.
Okay.
And I do own the Jaguar version. I checked, I have it, but there are no cheats for the Jaguar version, so I didn't play it. So I went back to the Saturn version, which is always my go-to version, because it has cheats. That's the main thing. And it looks good. So the original game ran at 320 by 240. The Saturn typically runs games at 320 by 224. I know it supports different resolutions, but that's what I think it's running this at. So you're not losing a lot of screen space.
Okay.
It runs full screen and everything's like super easy to see. And it's much easier to build a roller coaster on this version than on the PC because it just seems like you can see most of the roller coaster on the screen at the same time when you're building it. The only advantage I remember of the PC version over the Saturn version is just having a mouse. Because obviously a mouse is easier for a builder game.
Yeah.
Going back, like when I got my first Windows 95 PC, this was one of the first games I played, even though it was DOS. It's just because I had got a really cheap Bullfrog bundle at my store. And, I bought it, just this bundle of Bullfrog games. And back then and now, like, it was always fun to, like, exploit the AI in this game, the customer AI. So, like, I cheat that, I'm sure it's on the internet, but that every single person who played this game figured out on their own, is there are prize games, right? You throw ring toss or whatever, the things nobody ever wins. But your customer satisfaction goes up if they win at one of those games, even if the prize is totally worthless. So you can set, like, the price of the game to $20. And you can set the value of the prize to like $1, and you set the win rate to 100%, and everybody who plays it is happy. It increases their happiness spending like $20 to get a $1 prize.
I mean, that makes sense. That's what claw machines are, right?
Yeah, but claw machines you don't win every single time. Imagine a claw machine where you always won, but the prize was just worth nothing compared to the cost of the game.
Yeah.
I say some parts of the humor maybe don't work on me so much anymore, like people vomiting all the time. I'm not sure if you've noticed that in this game.
Yeah.
But especially if you build a bad roller coaster. Like, I guess 30 years ago, I thought it was kind of funny that there was a game where you could make people throw up. Now, I guess I'm not into that kind of humor so much anymore. I don't really care. There's a whole management sim part where you're supposed to, like, build parks and then buy new land and build new parks. Like, there's, I don't know, a dozen or so locations you can buy and build parks on and all that junk. Like, I get it. That's all neat. But really what I like is just, like, designing the park and especially building roller coasters. And I've played other roller coaster builder games. And I just think that's the most fun part for me.
Yeah.
So what did you think of Theme Park?
So I have this on Saturn, but again, it's in storage. So I played it on the Pocket, and I only spent a little bit with it. I didn't know about the cheat codes, and okay. I got past giving my theme park a very inappropriate name and all that stuff, get a little laugh out of it, and then after designing a little bit, I bounced off of it. Handheld, this isn't the best experience.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
So I didn't spend too much time with this, but I do like these kind of games. I wish I would have looked up the cheat codes to kind of get past a little bit of it. And let's see. Yeah, I really didn't have any other notes on my end. I didn't spend too much time with it. But okay. A game I did spend quite a bit of time with, I finished The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And let me power through my notes here. I'd like to say that the fire keys, I truly hate them with all my heart. Because, you shoot them and then they keep coming at you. They kind of take two shots. A lot of people don't like Navi, your fairy. I don't think she deserves all the hate. I didn't find her that annoying.
No. 3DS version fixed it too.
Well, I played on the Switch Online, and it wasn't the best experience because of the controller. I played and finished this game before all my stuff arrived, so I do have the N64 controller for the Switch, but I didn't bring that in my backpack when I moved here. But before I moved here, I did launch the 3DS port, and you're right, that one is a great version. And the one on the Switch isn't bad. It's just there's some stuff that could have been better with it, but that's really nitpicky. I do think the 3DS is the way to play this game now. Let's see what else. I the last time I played this game was actually when it came out in late 1998. And it was during my, I'm going out every night kind of party era. But I do remember canceling plans and getting into this game. Like, I really only did that with, like, this game and maybe, definitely Mario 64 and Symphony of the Night. I can't think of any other games around that time that really caught me. Let's see, what else do I have in here? Once you get used to the camera, this game is fine. It's a 10 out of 10 game for me. It really is. And it is a top, in my top 10 games as well. I think the dungeons are near flawless. The world is large, although empty in spots. People make fun of some of the dungeons. I didn't have that big of a problem with them. I like the fire dungeon the best. I think it's really creative writing, how people actually talk to you like you're a kid because you are a kid. And this created the Z targeting, which exists in most third-person games today. Let's see. I noted some interesting coding hacks. For example, like, why did the Temple of Time have its own screen? And the outside of the Temple of Time was just a painted background, like a pre-rendered background, almost like King's Quest V or Final Fantasy VII. And I don't think I noticed that when I was younger playing this. I just assumed everything was 3D. I think it's a perfect sequel to A Link to the Past. It brings some of the themes, the music, a two-world mode. I forgot how much it brought forward from the original Zelda, Adventure of Link, Link to the Past. It brings Tektites, Keys, Sora, Ghost, Levers, Dodongos, Wall Masters, Sages, and Weapons. And I forgot, opposite of that, how much Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom brought forward from this game. Like the Temple of Time, a lot of the themes, Raru, the Sages, the towns, Sheikah, clothing that protects you from hot and cold. Dead Hands, I could see coming from this to Tears of the Kingdom. It was actually my least favorite villain in Tears of the Kingdom. My favorite thing brought forward was the cuckoos. The chickens are the most powerful creature in the entire universe. You just can't kill them, and if you bug them enough, they will annihilate you. And let's see. I'm gonna skip some of my other notes because I had so much. The Ganondorf battle is a lot of fun, but the Ganon battle where he turns into the beast was epically frustrating for me, and it was the only time that I really lost control of the camera. Okay. And the worst part about this game is the fire sound effect, because it's in there a lot, and it just hurts. I feel that sound effect go through my whole body. And this game is the thesis of why I'm a retro gamer. I think the developers knocked it out of the park with this. It's from an era where they're still figuring out 3D, and it just works great. The hardware restrictions work very well with this, where they just had to focus on gameplay and the story, and not so much the graphics, even though the graphics and the sound aged really well. Whew, that is all my notes for this game. How about you?
So, yeah, I didn't have time to play it this week because it's been a very busy week. I did watch the current speedrun record, which is it's simply weird. It's one of those speed runs where someone does a bunch of random stuff for 10 minutes and then suddenly the ending credits roll.
Yeah.
So that's not a lot of fun. I'd rather watch like a complete playthrough. Mm-hmm. So I did not own a Nintendo 64 until I finished undergrad, which was December 99. And I originally bought the Donkey Kong 64 bundle. So Ocarina of Time is the second ever Nintendo 64 game I played.
Okay.
I really got hooked on it right away. I don't really recall ever having to use an FAQ or anything to defeat it. It's kind of easier than earlier games because you don't have to walk around and bomb just random spots to see if there's something behind them. Mm-hmm. It does kind of at one point force you into buying a rumble pack to find secret things, but they're optional secrets.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
That's the worst part of this game, for sure. So I later got this as a pre-order bonus for Wind Waker. So back in the day, if you pre-ordered Wind Waker, you got a copy of this game on GameCube. Mm-hmm. And that GameCube controller I would not recommend for Ocarina of Time. It also came with Ocarina of Time Master Quest, which I did not really like that much either. It's the same game with like, I don't know, sort of kind of remixed dungeons. Mm-hmm. Not like Master Quest in the original Legend of Zelda, where the dungeons are in different locations and everything is in a different location. This is the exact same game, but once you enter a dungeon, the layout's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And I would say the 3DS is the best way to play this game now.
I agree, 100%. Yeah.
And your complaints about Navi, that gets fixed in 3DS for sure. I think this is the biggest jump in the series in terms of generations. I think it's a pretty huge jump from Link to the Past, or Link's Awakening. I don't know which one was technically the one just before it. Great soundtrack. Like Forest Temple is one of my favorite songs for any game. If you've never listened to the orchestral album, it's outstanding. I put it on often when I am trying to work or relax. Mm-hmm. And also the soundtrack, I wrote down early Overclocked remix is like 50% Gerudo Valley remixes. And I don't really have anything negative to say about the game. All I really got is that Hyrule Field is empty and boring.
Yeah.
This was the first game with horseback riding, though.
I was just going to make that point, that the first time you ride Epona through that field is an epic feeling.
Yeah. I mean, someone's going to write in and be like, well, in the Phillips studio, blah, 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 blah. But this is the first one that I recall being able to ride a horse in.
Yeah.
Hopefully it actually is the first one, and not some CDI thing I forgot about.
Well, what do you want to play for the next episode?
So the Sony PlayStation is turning 29 this year. It's not 30, not the US, not 30 yet, only 29. But I'm going to do something to celebrate the PlayStation launch, and I'm going to go with Destruction Derby.
Nice. Good choice. And I'm following your lead, and I chose Ridge Racer.
Ridge Racer. So we're going to doing some PlayStation launch title racing games.
Yes. And if our listeners play any of these games, please email us, email@retrogameclub.net, and we will read your emails on this podcast. And we also have a Discord server that's doing a lot of stuff lately, and a whole bunch of social stuff that Zach takes care of for us. And how about I take the first and last email here?
Okay. That's good, because my voice is,
We're
whatever
losing
reason,
you.
has decided, I don't know whatever happened, it has decided that I'm going to not be able to talk today.
Well, Robert writes in and just wanted to take a moment to mention how sad he is about the possible ending of the podcast and Hugh retiring. And it's been a fun ride, and he wants to know what I have in plans. So I'm trying to work that out. There is no Hugh replacement as of yet. And if there is, I would like it to be like, Hugh, you and I are, and it's funny, we haven't talked about this at all. Yeah. You and I are both Gen Xers, about the same age, in the same industry. We actually don't agree that much on games we like, but we like kind of the same thing. It's hard to explain.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah.
And so I was thinking, to keep this podcast going and maybe to switch it up, I'm trying to find someone that's a little bit different than me in terms of generation, gender, background, country of origin, just something for different perspectives.
Yeah.
You'd be shocked how hard it is to find, but possibly it's because I don't know how to use Twitter and stuff that well.
Yeah, could be. Could be, yeah.
So if any of our listeners have any suggestions, please send them my way. But I do have a few guest hosts, people who have been on here before, and Zach, of course, to kind of keep the podcast going until it finds its feet again. And I hope it keeps going. I like doing this. I haven't done it 15 years like Hugh has, so I'm not.
That's basically my rationale. Yeah,
I'm not jaded yet, but I'll get there soon. Yeah. So Robert, thanks for writing in. And you said you've only written in a few times and regret not doing it more often. Well, no, you're not out of time yet. So please keep writing in, and if you're on socials and Discord and stuff, please get on ours. So yeah, thanks for writing in.
Yeah, and I'm not looking to go off and disappear or anything. I'm still gonna be doing a bunch of. I'm gonna still be posting random things online that interest me only. I was actually thinking, one of my first projects, I have this thing that I attempted to eBay, but nobody wanted.
Mm-hmm.
People
What is
list
it?
this thing on
What
eBay.
is
this
it?
is called it is the MP Exchanger. So if you look at the sticker, how much did I pay for this?
I can't see. It's blurry. Oh, you paid $4.99.
No, look below.
I can't see. I can't read that.
It says clearance, 50% off.
Okay.
I paid $2.50 for this.
Okay.
And it's been sitting here on my shelf for a long time. I bought it at GameStop in Mall of America.
What does that thing do?
So this is a device that you can plug in a Dreamcast memory card, an N64 memory card, a PlayStation memory card, or a Game Boy Color cartridge, and read the battery off it. Game Boy Color turns the battery. This is actually true for Sega Genesis also. The battery, if a Game Boy Color game has a battery, it's at the same address always. It's at the same ROM address. In Genesis, I can tell you it's the same thing. There's a fixed spot in the Genesis where you put the battery. And if you write a program that is larger than 2 meg, you have to account for a gap to allow for the battery in the cartridge.
Okay.
And so this is if you want to copy, it's a big device if you want to copy your games using this gizmo. Now, the first thing you'll notice is a sticker that says, work compatible with Windows ME and Windows 98 only.
Nice.
That's the first barrier to me doing anything with this. And by the way, I see this thing on eBay all the time. People ask $100 for this thing. I put it up for 99 cents. No one wanted it. So that tells me it is not worth $99. And here's the other problem with it. Do you see this other glaring problem with this device?
It's a parallel port?
It is a parallel port. A thing that I have not owned a computer with a parallel port in over 20 years.
Is there even a serial adapter for parallel, since those are very literally opposite things?
There are parallel to USB adapters.
Yeah. Interesting. I bet those work great.
I'm sure. So I've been debating as a fun project trying to write a Linux or maybe Mac driver for this, connected through the parallel to USB. I don't know though. And now that I look at it, the box says Dreamcast, but I don't actually see where you would plug a Dreamcast memory card into this. There's no hole for that.
Nice.
I just see holes for N64, PS, and Game Boy.
But also remember, other than that, after you retire, you can then email the podcast and troll us, for sure.
Yeah, and again, I'm not really retiring. I'm going to have a day job. I'm just not going to be podcasting anymore.
Yeah.
How does this work? It says compatible with PlayStation memory cards, Nintendo 64 memory cards. I own exactly one of those. Pocket Station for Dreamcast. What is Pocket Station for Dreamcast? Yeah, this thing is totally useless. I will probably just end up throwing it to electronics recycling. But in terms of side projects that I feel like doing in the future, I got at least one more. I got one more demo game I want to write, and then I'm probably never going to write one again. And I'm curious about a few. I've never written a driver for anything before, and that's what I'm thinking. I might learn Rust and write a driver for this completely useless piece of hardware. Or I may get frustrated with it and throw it out.
Pocket Station is a VMU for Dreamcast. I just looked it up.
I don't know where that plugs into this device. There's no hole for that unless it fits in a different port. So yeah, I got a lot of projects I want to do. And as much as I've podcasting for 15 years, it does kind of get in the way of some of these projects that I'd like to spend time on.
Yeah.
And I can't talk anymore. I'm not like a smoker or anything. My voice is just shot. I don't know. Maybe I've had long COVID this whole time. I don't know. Yeah, look at that Pocket Station. Did they sell this in America?
No, I think this was only Japan. I think. Yep.
Huh. Well, this device is more useless than I thought it was before.
Pocket Station has a pretty good processor on it. It could definitely run Doom.
Good, yeah. I'm probably not going to do as a project. But that's it. Yeah, I got one more demo I want to write, and then I'm probably not going to write any more demos, at least not for that system. I will probably try and learn a different game console, though. I just haven't decided what yet. Maybe I'll do 7800, now that that's being revived.
Yeah. All right, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, let me open the show notes again, though, because I just closed them like a dummy. From Adam. He said he really enjoyed the last 2 episodes and enjoys the magazine episodes. I think one of our last 2 episodes was a magazine episode. He was a subscriber to Next Generation magazine through the 90s, and it was really interesting how that was the main way we got information back then. He really misses those days in the space between information, so you had time to focus on things other than reading news all the time. He remembers 3DO being in stores and wanting to play Gex and Road Rash. He saw ads for those games a lot, but never Street Fighter, and did not know previously that Street Fighter 2 was on the 3DO. Yeah, it was kind of a late release, I think, for the system. I mentioned something about building computers, I think, recently. He said he's been building computers since the 90s, but for his last purchase, it didn't feel like it was worth the effort. He ended up buying a pre-built Corsair Vengeance PC. Had it for about a year now with no issues. The best part is really just having incredibly fast drives, 5,000 meg per second. And then also has worked with the Mac Mini that I've been looking at and recommends it as well, too, that it's very fast and has a great form factor. He also had the new Nintendo 3DS, bought the Majora's Mask Edition, purchased because he had never previously owned any Nintendo handheld, which is surprising. It was great to play Super Smash Brothers, during downtime at work. He also enjoyed Fire Emblem, Awakening, and of course the Zelda games. And as a question for us, do you think gamers that grew up playing on retro consoles are 60 frame per second snobs because most retro consoles play at 60 frames per second?
I'm going to answer first and say no, because I'm used to glitchy games like Rygar or Life Force, stuff like that, where you use slowdown to beat the game easier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, this is why I got to listen to the Space Raft interview, by the way. Because there's a very... Well, we've already heard it by now, but we talk about that in the interview, yeah. You know what? I don't think I even knew that those consoles ran at 60 frames per second.
I don't think I did either.
Until I started looking at programming. I attended a panel on Atari 2600 programming a while ago. That's what kind of got me interested. And that's where they mentioned, the thing every 60 seconds, the screen redraws, and in that little, gap in time during the V blank, that's when all your code executes. Right? I'm oh, wow, that's really different. And Atari 2600 was 60 frames per second? Wow. I didn't know that. So that, and now again, I'm the worst person to ask. I mean, I play a lot of games. There's a lot of games where there's a Switch and a PS5 version. I play the Switch version just because, and the Switch version is locked at 30 frames per second because it's on the Switch. So I barely even know what frames per second difference is between 60 and 30. I get one's double, but
You don't notice, is what you're saying.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild's 30 frames per second?
Yeah.
Seems fine.
Was there any more to this one?
No, he was going to ask about the Ask Me Anything episode, though.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Adam. So, yeah, Adam, we already answered that one, too, and thanks for suggesting that. And let's see. Majors writes in. He talks about, last episode we talked about breakdancing in the Olympics.
We did.
And Majors was there, in Southern California during the 80s and doesn't remember any of the rumors about breaking necks or bones or anything like that. So he says that must have been a Midwest thing, but I never heard about that either. So that may have been a Chicago thing.
I was actually living in Pennsylvania at the time when breakdancing was popular.
Definitely a Pennsylvania thing. And he thinks adding it to the Olympics was just to get more eyes on the Olympics for money, which is probably true. And why no pro wrestling in the Olympics? Probably, and he suggests that it's just not enough. Like 2 weeks is not long enough to get a good story going.
Yeah, I mean, the story is you're trying out for the Olympics, but I understand that.
Yeah.
You need a good feud, right? I mean, like, again, it would have to be a team sport. Like, America, it's not like the two guys going in for America are competing against each other for a medal because it's scripted. Mm-hmm. So it would be two guys that have, like, previously agreed to a match. So the medal would have to go to two people. Mm-hmm. And, like, they'd be going up against, like, Japan or Mexico or other places where pro wrestling's popular. And there definitely could, you know, if America knew ahead of time who they were going to send to the Olympics, you could build up a story, I think. But then you have to hope neither of them get injured before the Olympics.
Yeah. So maybe the writers would get the gold. Like the the rest of the staff. That's funny.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't think the choreographer for breakdancing gets in a medal, but
yeah,
I don't know if they all choreo. I can't imagine the breakdancers do everything by themselves, right? Like they must have a team of people coaching them and stuff, right? They must have coaches and trainers and stuff.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. But
I don't know.
And then he mentions how I mentioned my love for Balloon Fight on the NES in the last episode. And he's glad to hear I like it. And other than being very addictive, it has great tunes. And I totally agree. And then your encounter with Hotel Mario, not having the disc in it, but having a country disc in it. And he said it's not too bad. That's a great case. If you have a CD burner, you could just make a disc.
Yeah, I ended up not buying the empty case. I didn't really. I don't know.
And
it would look weird. My CDI shelf right now only has one game, and it's in a tall case. It's not in like a little one.
What game is it?
It is Defender of the Crown.
Ooh. My only CDI game is Felix the Cat. Let's see. And then how we mentioned Bayou Billy last episode and how Nintendo Power really tricked us into buying games like that. And he was a victim of that as well. He was working at Babbage's at the time and picked it up and, agrees it was a very overhyped, poor experience. So thank you, everyone, for writing in. Again, that is email@retrogameclub.net or all of our socials. All of it's in our show notes. And we have some social feedback here from a question of the episode. Have you ever taken time off work specifically for gaming? And we both had answers. Mine was when Breath of the Wild came out, I took 2 days off. And when Tears of the Kingdom came out, I took 1 day off. And back in the 90s, I guess I canceled plans every once in a while for games like I mentioned earlier in the episode. But that's about it. How about you?
No, unless you count like going to a convention, I have never taken off time for gaming. I guess the way I see it is my games aren't going to expire. So
yeah.
You know, games aren't a piece of fruit as far as I know. And it's not like something bad is going to happen if I
don't play it on day one.
Don't play it right away on day one. Yeah, in fact, I was planning to start, I've talked about how much I enjoy the Trail series. I was actually planning to start the most recent installment in the US tonight, and it came out in like June. It's just, I felt like starting it in the fall for no particular reason other than that's when I wanted to start playing it.
Yeah.
Well, actually, hold up. Is that something? Are there ever games that you have not played because you're like, I think this is a winner game? Like, East 10 comes out in the end of October. You know that, right? Did you pre-order East 10?
Yes.
Hopefully you updated the shipping address.
Yes.
So that comes out, I think, October 25th. I think I'm probably going to start that like January 2nd.
That's going to be a day one game for me, for sure.
Yeah, I think
I want to get in on the original translation, and I hope it's as bad
before
as...
they issue a retranslation. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I'm really thinking like, that seems like a good time. Dead of winter. It's after the holidays. It's dark at like 3 p.m. There's nothing to do. Football season's basically over. That seems like a good time to just. I realize it's almost playoff season, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Seems like a good time to start outdoor themed RPG. I hear there's like a lot of sailing or something in this game.
Yeah.
So might be a good winter escape for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And but yeah, some people write in for social media. One person says, "What about podcasting?" And my response is, "A fair point. Every once in a while, when I'm mixing, I think like, if I did have a podcast, I'd have more time to play retro games." But podcasting is my excuse to talk about retro games because I don't have that many friends that play retro games, and so this is the only way I could talk about it. It's not like my wife is really into me talking. Just blabbing about retro games to her all the time. And someone else took time off for the Halo 2 launch, back before day one patches and hour-long installs. And then we have our next question. What are your favorite homebrew games for retro systems? And again, please email us. Email at retrogameclub.net or hit all of our socials that Zach runs. We're on like everything. We have a Discord. And, if you play any of our games, Ocarina of Time, Theme Park, Ridge Racer, Destruction Derby, if you install a FlippyBird, or what else did we have here? If you have your own Stellar in your Xbox, or if you use whatever NESMaker is called now.
Or if you want to take this MPX changer off my hands.
Yes, that's right. Start bidding. Well, let's start a bidding war on it.
I'm really thinking of getting rid of this giant Sega Genesis controller that's new in box that I paid almost nothing for also.
It's a giant controller?
I told you about it. I think I mentioned it in the previous episode. It's the flight yoke for the Genesis.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
That's another one people seem to charge a lot for, but I doubt anyone actually gets any money for it.
Yeah, that's something I don't even want.
No, you don't want this. It's got to be the worst way to play Sega Genesis games, and it's gigantic.
And I'm in a tiny house now.
Yeah, I don't even think it works for flight games very well.
Yep. But again, that's email at retrogameclub.net, and our next games are Destruction Derby and Ridge Racer. And I think that wraps up this episode.
Yeah, so thanks for listening.